Ladies and gentlemen, James Lane here, and on this episode of the American Reveille podcast, we're going to talk about the NGFS. Have you ever heard of them? The Central Banks and Supervisors Network for Greening the Financial System. And it's just as ominous as it sounds, folks. This has everything to do with the Great Reset. I've been telling you for months, regardless of what happens with the election, we're going to have to fight off the wicked Great Reset for a very long time. And now the intelligence agencies are on board for the ride too. Folks, this stuff is scary. This stuff is freaky. I'm going to tell you all about it next. Ladies and gentlemen, happy Sunday. Welcome to the American Reveille podcast. Folks, I thought it would be a fun and fantastic idea to get off of the Joe Biden subject. Well, not entirely. We'll talk about him a little bit, but to just get off of ragging on him for a minute and get back on to the greater problem this world faces. And what's that greater problem? Well, it's the encompassing matrix that is surrounding everything that's been happening, because everything that's been happening has been happening under the umbrella of the Great Reset. And the Great Reset hasn't gone away. The video cameras and the news stories have just been focusing in other areas. So while that's been happening, the Great Reset has been weaving its webs and building its bridges across the lands of this great planet. And now, well, the NGFS, folks. You don't know what they are, but they know who you are. And we're going to talk about them. We're going to go through this Breitbart article. It's a little bit of a long one, but it's important information for you to know. It's important for you to understand the why behind all of this. All right? It's not as simple as people think. And it has to do with a global network of bad characters, evil actors, and dirty, dastardly players, ladies and gentlemen. All right, before you do anything, do me a favor, subscribe wherever you're watching this, whether it's Odyssey, ODYSEE, I'm on there, American_Reveille, all right, REVEILLE. You can find me on Rumble. I'm there as well, American Reveille. You can look me up. If you're on YouTube, still subscribe and everything. They're not distributing me. If you're seeing this and wondering why you haven't been seeing my videos, it's because I'm pretty shadow banned at the moment on YouTube. So my numbers dropped significantly, as did all people on the right side of the spectrum that are trying to make a difference in this moment we're all going through in history. So it is what it is. We're going to work through it, but do me a favor, wherever you're watching this, subscribe, hit the notification button or bell if it has one, leave a comment, share, talk about the American Reveille, talk about the American Reveille podcast. We need your help. And of course, www.americanreveille.com. Sign up for the newsletter. If you want to get a hold of me, if you need to get in touch with me, if you got something to say, some way you can help, some idea, some connections, James Lane at AmericanReveille.com. That's my personal email, James Lane at AmericanReveille.com. Folks, we are taking a look at this Breitbart article, The Great Reset Updated. You might not have heard of NGFS, but NGFS has a plan for you, ladies and gentlemen. It has a plan for you. You've heard of the World Economic Forum. You've heard of the Great Reset. We've done videos on it. We've talked about it. We've beat it into the ground. Well, unfortunately, they're not going away anytime soon. Let's take a read. This is by Virgil, came out January 23rd, 2021. Here's a December 15th headline in the New York Times that should have been lost in the holiday whirl, should not have been lost, in the holiday whirl, nor in the general hubbub of news since, quote, Feds join climate network to applause from the left. Did you hear me? The Feds have joined the climate network. What the hell do they have to do with that? As the article details, the U.S. Federal Reserve Board, the nation's central bank, has officially joined the network of central banks and supervisors for greening the financial system, NGFS. That's greening. That's environmentalism. I'm reading this from here, guys. Greta Thunberg, Green New Deal, all that jazz. And as the Times makes clear in its headline, the left is loving it. That's what's happening right now, folks. All right. Somehow, everything that Greta Thunberg represents, the destruction of the planet, basically. She thinks it's saving the planet. She's actually destroying the planet. They've merged with the U.S. Federal Reserve Board, the people who control the money in this country. This is fantastic. Let's keep reading, folks. NGFS, welcome to Sunday, by the way. Do you feel good yet? Do you have that good feeling in the pit of your stomach? I don't know. It feels kind of like diarrhea. NGFS is an organization that few Americans have heard of, and yet it's potentially one of the most powerful entities on the planet. Its roster of members and observers is nearly 100, including such mighties as the Bank of Japan, the European Central Bank, and the International Monetary Fund, and now the U.S. Federal Reserve. So we can see that just about all the money in the world passes through its institution. That, ladies and gentlemen, that, my friends, that, my fellow Americans, that is power. Now, let's take a little deeper, a little closer of an investigation. Let's look at NGFS. I went to their website. All right, here's their website. Look, NGFS, Central Banks and Supervisors Network for Greening the Financial System. Just listen to this. Listen to their origin and purpose. The network of central banks and now this is a bank. These are financial systems. Nothing to do with the environment. I've been screaming for months and months and months to look at a business practice called corporate social responsibility. I believe that the corporate social responsibility, which is when businesses got into the business, basically, of doing things in society that please people so they could make more money. It makes them seem like better companies. All right? That's not the definition of it. It has a much more innocent definition, but that's what it amounts to. And I believe that this is the evolution of corporate social responsibility. Go look that term up. Google it. Well, I hate Google now. Sorry, it is what it is. They're horrible, monopolistic, predatory companies. But DuckDuckGo, there we go. Use that one. DuckDuckGo, all right? DuckDuckGo.com. And look it up. Look it up. This is not good. Origin and purpose. The network of central banks and supervisors for greening the financial system launched at the Paris One Planet Summit. The Paris Accords that Biden just signed us back up for. Yippee! 12 December 2017. It's a group of central banks and supervisors willing on a voluntary basis to share best practices and contribute to the development of environment and climate risk management in the financial sector and to mobilize mainstream finance to support the transition towards, here's another key word, sustainable economy. Do you see the system they're putting in place? So now when they say we need equity, and people should all have the same money, the banks are going to agree. What are you going to do when you wake up and your bank account says zero and you call and they say that you don't deserve your money anymore? It's not green enough, ladies and gentlemen. It is not green enough. There's much more we could go through with them. And It is horrifying, and I may actually do it with another episode. But I want to get back to the original article. I just wanted to give you a little introduction to who and what the hell is going on here with now the United States Bank and their main board, their main Federal Reserve Board. That's what I mean. I want you to think about a skeleton or a foundation or infrastructure. They're laying railroad tracks for later. That's what this is. They're laying railroad tracks. They're making spider webs. They're putting connections. They're connecting point A and B so that when they pull the switch, everything works the way they want it to work. All right? Back to the article. It's interesting to note that in the past, the left has been mostly hostile to big financial institutions, seeing them as pillars of capital. And yet nowadays, the left, at least its huge green faction, is cheering for the financiers. Why this turnout? Because NGFS is an institution that the green left can control and thus guide in its pursuit of sustainability. And being the favored buzzword of the ecologically woke. As NGFS says of itself, its mission is to contribute to the development of environment and climate risk management in the financial sector, to mobilize mainstream finance to support the transition towards a sustainable economy. I need you guys to ask yourselves, what is a sustainable economy? What does that mean? What does the word sustainable mean? What does sustainable economy mean? Make it a pattern. I don't know. I'm just saying. If you can't answer that question, we have problems, folks. It's not a good thing. So now we're starting to get the picture. NGFS is the global fusion of big green and big money and is now known as woke capital. Do you see where they're invading and infiltrating, where they're taking over, folks? Follow the money. And yes, it's the same woke capital that's been leading the push for the Great Reset, the wholesale remaking of national and international societies and economies, all in accordance with the politically correct vision of Klaus Schwab and his plutocratic pals at the World Economic Forum, which Virgil and many others here at Breitbart News have heartily critiqued. All right. These are rich oligarchs envisioning a new world, a new socialist society where everybody starts and ends at the same place, where no possessions are needed, where we live in harmony. I want you to remember a very important thing. And I'm going to say this quote from the top of my head. I don't have it scripted. I don't have it written down. So it's probably not going to be perfect. But do you remember in The Matrix when they had Morpheus tied up in the room with his arms behind his back and he's got his head down? You remember they're torturing him? And Agent Smith tells the other agents to leave the room. And then he takes his earpiece out and he tells him, you know, we originally tried to make a perfect world for humans, right? He tells him that. He says, but humans just couldn't accept it. It just didn't work. Entire crops were lost. You remember how that went? So in the real world, the real matrix we're living in, you've got these rich elites, these global elites from around the world, telling you they know how to make a perfect society for humans. And if they do succeed to make this society, the same thing that they said in the Matrix is going to happen in the real world. Entire crops will be lost. And if you remember in the Matrix, when they said crops, they were referring to human beings. Folks, there is no great reset without a great genocide. You heard that here at the American Reveille first. I'm calling it right now. All right? which means that I'll probably be the first person they arrest in 15 years if that actually starts to happen. So let's hope we win this, ladies and gentlemen. Push against this horrible, horrible, horrible ideology. In the meantime, conservatives, populists, and sovereigntists, those who believe that the U.S. should retain sovereignty over its own affairs, have been viewing these developments with alarm. Indeed, it's been pressure from the right that kept the Fed from joining NGFS much earlier. As the Times explains, the Fed's formal membership in NGFS is something that Democratic lawmakers have been pushing for, and the Republicans have eyed warily. And yet now that Joe Biden is in the White House, pledged to the green agenda, the Fed will feel all the more emboldened to do exactly as the New York Times wishes. Fortunately, alert Republicans are on the watch. The watch leader is Rep. Andy Barr of Kentucky, who told the Times of his fears that the Fed and the NGFS would crimp, even cripple, American business through backdoor financial regulation. Quote, "I'm going to be raising money on this issue much more vociferously," Barr said, adding, "I think my colleagues will as well." So I want to tell you something really quick. I want to make a connection for you, and I want to see if you agree with me. And you can do that in the comments or send me an email, jameslane@AmericanReveille.com. You know how Andy Barr is being attacked viciously lately by the left over guns and Trump and all kinds of stuff? It's not actually about any of that. It's about this, because he's against the Great Reset. So they're trying to trash him. This is the agenda that's trying to come in. This is what's happening behind the scenes. This is what they're trying to put in place, ladies and gentlemen. All right. All this other crap that we're going through, even COVID, all of this, it's all smoke and mirrors. It's all a horse and pony show. It's all just a cover for the transition into the most tyrannical worldwide takeover you could ever imagine. Ladies and gentlemen, this Great Reset stuff, it's going to lead to World War III if we don't fight against this ideology here. Insane. It's absolutely insane. All right. Indeed, Barr helped organize a joint letter of protest in which a total of 47 House Republicans wrote to Fed Chairman Jerome Powell on December 9th, warning against politically motivated and public relations-focused decisions to limit credit availability to politically disfavored industries. You see what's happening there? If the industries are not in the right social contract with the right people, the funding is not available. Of course, since their loss in 2018, House Republicans are now in the minority. If the majority House Democrats all stick together, House Republicans can be mostly ignored. And that's a hard reminder to those who see themselves as being above voting. Elections, including the 18 midterms that cost the GOP its majority, do, in fact, have big consequences. And he's absolutely right. We're going through those consequences right now, because if our party would have just united around Trump, we wouldn't be in this situation right now. If you want to look back even further, let's blame Republicans when we had the House. If you remember that, 2016 to 2018, remember? They could have done all of the things Trump wanted to do. Trump made mistakes himself, but nobody cooperated with Trump for 4 years. So yes, they do, in fact, have big consequences. Meanwhile, the U.S. Fed has the power to choke off bank financing for any business or even an entire industry. That is, if the Fed declares something to be a systemic credit risk, lenders will shy away, lest they be labeled as violating their fiduciary responsibilities. Let me tell you something. You know how Facebook and Twitter and Amazon all work together to do what they did to Parler? If the Fed, who is now with the Green New Deal and all those folks, if they deem your business uncreditworthy because you're not into the Green New Deal, nobody will work with you and your business will be destroyed. That is what I consider and what I'm now coining a federal monopoly, ladies and gentlemen, a federal monopoly. Who is the oversight on that? Who's the oversight? Who watches? Is there a House committee run by Democrats who are all into the Green Deal too? We have a toxic ideology seeping into the hearts, souls, and minds of millions of Americans, including all of our Democratic officials. We have a very big, very hard road ahead, ladies and gentlemen. In this fashion, the Fed could build a blockade against industries despised by the Greens, see? Including oil and natural gas, mining and manufacturing. We know how Biden feels about that. Keystone XL, baby. He destroyed union jobs on the first day, making enemies out of unions and Native American communities alike that were benefiting from this. And Canada hates. How does Canada hate us right now? Think about that. They're like, if you ever watch a depiction of Canada, like when they're mad at somebody, they're like, we're mad at you. I'm sorry. Like they're like supposed to be the nicest people. And yet they're pissed off at Biden. Why? Because they laid billions of dollars worth of pipe and infrastructure, and Biden didn't even have the common courtesy to consult with them before he screwed thousands and thousands of people from Canada and from the United States out of good paying jobs. Biden is a puppet of the Great Reset, ladies and gentlemen, and we are going to have to slog our way through this mess. In this fashion, the Fed could build a blockade. That's everything I've been saying, folks. They can literally cancel people. You're basically going to give, cancel culture from social media. This is going to give it real power. Your entire business can be canceled now by the Fed, ladies and gentlemen. Of course, such discrimination is exactly what NGFS, now including the Fed, has in mind: to use the power of discriminatory finance to force industries, companies, and people to go green. Either that or cease to exist altogether. Virgil should note that NGFS has plenty of friends in high places, including in the private sector, all eager to help in this mandatory greening. One such friend is Larry Fink, CEO of Blackrock, the Manhattan-based financial colossus. Assets under management, $7.8 trillion, controlled by this one company. How is that legal? How is that legal? That has for years been pushing a top-down liberal green agenda. Under a December 17th headline, Larry Fink's Blackrock doubles down on woke capitalism. Breitbart News' John Carney reported on Fink's latest letter to investors, which declares, quote, climate change has become a defining factor in companies' long-term prospects. Awareness is rapidly changing, and I believe we are on the edge of a fundamental reshaping of finance. Folks, the Great Reset has used global warming. They can't even call it global warming anymore because that was disproven. So they just call it climate change. They've literally, we're going to read in history books long after we're all dead, hundreds of years from now, about a great wool that was pulled over the world's eyes and used to benefit rich monopolies and benefactors all over the world and push down anybody from any prospects whatsoever of becoming successful in life. All right, we're going to read about that one day, or at least our descendants will, because that's exactly what is going on. And there's just too many low information people that haven't been woken up. So we have to keep spreading the message, keep spreading the word, folks. I hope you're sharing this. You better be sharing this with people. People need to know what's happening with the NGFS, what's happening with the Great Reset. This information is a priority. Whoever is listening to this, you tell them about the American Reveille. You tell them about the NGFS. You tell them about the Great Reset. You share. Our country depends on you, ladies and gentlemen, and our company depends on you. So please help us out, help each other out. We're going to do the same. We're going to get the word out, and that's why we're focusing on this type of content, all right? We can see immediately that Fink's fundamental reshape is little different from a Great Reset. Indeed, BlackRock's $7.4 trillion represents about a fifth of the value of the U.S. stock market, and so its power to force investment decisions is without question. Moreover, Blackrock is being joined in its green power playing by the likes of Citigroup, Goldman Sachs, Morgan Stanley, and all the rest of the top banks and investment houses, not to mention super financiers led by George Soros. And so just about anything is possible. That's going to be a problem even with my company. Folks, so right now the American Reveille is developing a much larger scale professional business plan, full-on industry analysis, market analysis, everything I need to go pitch investors for the millions of dollars that I'm looking for to build a large-scale media empire for the right, all right? I need that. I need to build that, right? But I'm not going to be able to go to Citigroup or Goldman Sachs or any of these people. I'm going to have to find private angel investors and get different investors from all over the place to make up that amount. It's going to be 10 times harder to do than if I could go to a firm and show them how we can make this work and how we can influence the culture and the message through society. And those options are just gone. They're off the table for companies like mine and companies like yours if you're on the right. So this is a very powerful thing that's happening. It's not going well, and it's not going away. And we need to keep waking up to it. Businesses keep needing to build coalitions with each other. We need to keep communications open, plain and simple. So we're talking about how powerful they are, and that's leading into the next words here in this article. Thus, it's likely that we'll see the impact of this woke capital SWAT team in the years to come. And NGFS, plus the World Economic Forum, plus Blackrock, and all the other wokesters running billion, even trillion-dollar outfits put the green hammer down on the politically incorrect sectors. And that's me. That's where we're at. All this is bad news. Most immediately, American coal, as an aside, we might note that, yes, it's a bit strange that China, by the way, is still building new coal plants, while global Greens look the other way. Greens prefer instead to focus on unemploying the last West Virginia coal miner, while accepting China's promise to fix everything by 2060. Yes, that's the scenario that China puts forward. Let us do whatever we want now, and 4 decades in the future, everything will be fine. And the Greens we are eating up. Sorry, that didn't make any sense. And the Greens are eating it up. Excuse me. I'm thinking about something, and that's what threw me off. What I'm thinking about is how this could all just be part of a larger plan put forth by China so that China could literally throw a silent coup of the world. Because at the end of the day, who runs the World Economic Forum? Who runs all of these large international organizations? All paths lead to communist China. Never a good thing, folks. Let's keep going. The hidden green hand, next section. We Americans might ask ourselves, how did we get here? How did we get to the point that control of our lives belongs to institutions, the Fed, NGFS, Blackrock, etc., that few citizens know about and none ever voted for? And how, even if we are properly informed, could we reclaim power over our own destiny? Yes, those are interesting questions which Joe Biden has never, ever had to answer. Did you notice the other day he keeps shirking reporters? Even the new press secretary couldn't give an answer for anything around this subject. During his campaign, especially the rioting, during his campaign, Biden was happy to keep quiet about matters of woke capital because even Democrats know it's never, ever a popular vote getter to say that you're looking forward to turning over control of the American economy to a shadowy foreign body such as the NGFS. Folks, oh God, it's just nasty. It's just so nasty to have to, I read so much of this stuff. And I pick the best quality that I can find to present to you. And sometimes it's hard to read about because it's just so horrible to think about. Like, Joe Biden is handing over the reins of a lot of this stuff to these shadowy, horrible, evil international figures. Now, that doesn't mean it's the end all be all. It would take them decades to wrangle full control of everything from America, but that's their plan. It shouldn't be by 2060 the world will be okay. China's plan is by 2060. The United States of America is a puppet of China. Completely. That is what they want by 2060. All right. That is why it's hard to read this stuff, because it's the absolute truth. You have to look deeper. You have to look to the big picture and what they're trying to do. To be sure, Biden has been happy to talk in suitably vague terms about his plans for greening the economy. And yet the message was always that Americans would do this because it was good for America and for the world. Meanwhile, the lurking reality that the world would be dictating to America without much regard for American jobs or prosperity was never in Biden's vocabulary. That's because he lied. We shouted, remember, on the right, we shouted from the top of the mountain tops. We shouted from wall to wall, sea to shining sea, that Biden was full of crap. You didn't want to listen, did you? Indeed, Biden was able to stealth the Greens' true agenda, and now in the first days of the 46th presidency, here we are. The Fed is in the NGFS, and the Fed Chair Powell will soon be working with the world's central bank, joined by the Fink of Blackrock et al. I keep wanting to call him the Fink because I keep remembering the pro wrestler from, I think it was an announcer from pro wrestling from the 80s, Howard Finkel or something. They called him the Fink. So I keep wanting to call him the Fink. They're joined by Fink. He's that CEO, that shadowy, evil CEO in New York, the $7 trillion guy, Blackrock. Yeah, to chart out our future. Why does he get to chart out our future, by the way? Who elected them, right? Nobody. Of course, nobody. And yet the Biden administration will be happy to give the unelected globalists the whip. In the meantime, a look at NGFS's Twitter feed these past few weeks shows that it has been busy working with central banks and companies around the world to assure green sustainability in all economic activities. In fact, BlackRock has managed to insinuate 2 of its executives into senior economic jobs in the Biden administration, one running the White House National Economic Council and the other as the Deputy Secretary of the Treasury Department. So now we have 2 executives from BlackRock tied to the NGFS and the Great Reset working in the White House. Wow. Wow. Do you see it all connecting? So now you have to think of it like a machine, right? They're going to pull this big lever when these gears are going to turn and they're going to go, right? And it's going to have to keep turning on and keep churning and keep doing what it has to do to extract the freedom from this country. And they will extract some freedoms. But just like uploading something to the internet takes time and a status bar goes 5%, 10%, 20%. So too, over the next 4 years, will this machine, this Great Reset machine. And we will have many opportunities to throw a wrench in the machinery. So I know it's frightening. And I know it will get a little worse, but don't worry. There are good patriots across this country, just like here at the American Reveille, that are going to do everything in their power to sway the ideology in the other direction. All right. So what comes next? I'm reading again. What will happen in 2021? An early straw in the wind came on January 16th when Breitbart News reported that global greens associated with the United Nations Environmental Program say that the price of the U.S. re-entering the Paris Climate Framework, the one negotiated by Barack Obama back in 2015, and from which Donald Trump withdrew in 2017, will be $50 billion a year. And remember, the other day, the first day of Biden's presidency, he signed the executive order to put us back in the Paris Climate Accord. So he just signed up $50 billion of your tax money, ladies and gentlemen. Remember what he said. He's not raising your taxes. So where's that $50 billion coming from? And if they're just going to print it, remember what happened to Venezuela, ladies and gentlemen. So perhaps as much as 500 billion a year. Wow, I didn't get 50 billion a year minimum, excuse me, and up to 500 billion a year. So now we're going to be spending half a trillion a year. I don't know how that's justifiable. If so, that will be an example of the sort of payments that Uncle Sam is making, even as the Biden administration says, hey, don't look at us, it's the UN. Furthermore, we can assume that American coal miners and coal mines will be goners as the Fed joins most obviously with the Biden Environmental Protection Agency to shut them all down. Then the next target will likely be the oil and gas companies, starting with the biggest, Exxon. The Greens can't shut Exxon and big oil and gas down right away, of course, lest the economy comes to a literal standstill. And you've seen what they've been doing to destroy the economy since the start of COVID, right? And Republican strength in the 2020 elections convinced Democrats that they have to be careful. Yeah. So I still don't think anybody needs to be careful. They say, oh, the right needs to be careful as well as the left, right? So I get the left needing to be careful, blah, blah, blah. They're going to be sneakier, not necessarily careful, sneakier about how they do things. But the right, they keep saying the right needs to be careful as well. No, the right needs to be loud. The right needs to come together. The right needs to have a voice that screams louder than anything the left has ever heard, or they will take all of these things away from us, folks. History tells us this, all right? Are we really going to be insane? Are we really going to fulfill the definition of insanity and do the same thing again and again and hope for something different to result? No. History tells us that if we sit on our heels and we don't open our mouths, these folks will have no jobs and our country will cease to be down the road. Instead, we're reading again, instead, the Democrats will stand by as the Fed and the NGFS begin a slow squeeze, screwing down on the energy companies' access to credit and capital, which will in turn hurt their ability to finance their operations and depress their stock prices, thereby leaving them even more vulnerable to financial pressures. The key, as far as NGFS and its allies are concerned, is to be indirect so as not to rile up the deplorables if they can help it. As globalist Ian Bremmer, head of the Eurasia Group, wrote on January 4th, quote, policy will have to come through executive action, given resolute Republican opposition in Congress. But there is still much the administration can do, from new methane pollution rules to fuel efficiency standards and the integration of climate considerations into financial regulation. Thus, we can see Bremmer and his allies want to put as little as possible before actual voters, you and me, ladies and gentlemen, preferring hidden hand rulemaking by distant bureaucracies. So they want to, like a boa constrictor, slowly suffocate their prey. And who is their prey? You and I, ladies and gentlemen, and the jobs that we work. Following this sneaky playbook, the Fed will simply declare that Exxon and others are credit risks, and that ruling will keep the banks away. That ruling will keep the banks away, lest they be accused of violating their fiduciary duties, a serious legal charge in the financial and finance world. And if the banks shrink away, the capital markets too will back off. As a result, gasoline could get scarce, and maybe the price of gasoline will go up $1 or $2. Consumers at the pump will become angry, of course, but they'll figure out the cause. Perhaps not. Perhaps they'll blame big oil or middlemen or OPEC. In other words, it's possible that consumers will fail to figure out the true reason for shortages and price increases. And that's a big deal. We have to remember who the bad people are here, who are the folks coming after your jobs, coming after your families, coming after our way of life, the folks that are twisting the words, twisting the definitions, twisting our hearts, minds, and souls, taking our children away from us, and ruining their minds. Folks, the Great Reset is at the heart of all of this. All of this. Of course, some figures, such as Kentucky's Andy Barr, can be counted on to point out the true cause of the coming gas crisis. And yet, will smart voices be heard above the din of demagoguery? Can we count on the mainstream media to explain the facts and causes of the problem? No, of course we can't, folks. But okay. Let's suppose that the three-way choking of Exxon as the hands of the Fed, NGFS, and Blackrock wrap around the company's throat were to become a salient political issue. What then? It's a safe bet that the Biden administration would say that there's nothing it can do. Bidenites will say that the free market, informed, of course, by dire environmental reality, is simply passing a harsh verdict on Exxon. That is, world capitalism has decided that oil is so dangerous and catastrophic that it must be shunned, whereupon all the titans of finance would say, quote, "The president is correct. Exxon is a bad investment. And yes, there'll be lots of winks around the top players. Hope that the masses never, all right? The top players, they hope that the masses never wise up to their green game playing." I get this, right? Because if we did realize what was happening, people would lose their minds, and these people would be terrified. And that's why I'm trying to put this out to you guys, because while people are focusing on other things, you need to focus on the big picture as well. And the big picture, the big scary monster in the closet, the creature hiding under the bed, the Pandora's box, is the Great Reset, and it is here. The machine is built, and the lever is being pulled, ladies and gentlemen. And now we are a race, right? We're on a race against the clock. Plain and simple. All right, plain and simple. Let's keep reading. Such a shape-shifting stance, of course, would save Democratic lawmakers in Congress the trouble and the risk of taking responsibility for any of these changes, to say nothing of actually voting for them. That is, the Democrats will be able to say, "Don't look at us. We didn't vote for any of this. These decisions are being made by international organizations and international law. It's way above our pay grade." And that's how they're selling us out, ladies and gentlemen. That's the global New World Order, folks. Yes, politicians in a potentially dicey situation like irate voters and pitchforks, they're always happy to pass the buck to someone else. The more nameless and faceless, the better. And NGFS fits that description to a T. Under such a scenario, would the Republican opposition be able to explain a path forward? A path that would save the American economy from being greened into a palsy or a coma? Would Republicans, joined by a few Democrats, such as West Virginia Senator Joe Manchin, would they be able to articulate a way to get the Fed out of the NGFS, out of the Paris Climate Agreement? That being, the carbon reduction deal that Barack put us in, that Donald Trump took us out of, that Biden signed an executive order to stick us back in, the one we talked about earlier that could cost us up to $500 billion a year, $500 billion a year. And then out of any obscure regulatory restrictions, national and international, that the Biden administration has put us in and is about to put us in. Folks, we've learned that once the U.S. enters into an agreement, an international one, it's pretty hard to get out of. And we can't even get out of Afghanistan, so that should say something. And, when you look at the NGFS, what the U.S. is in now, do Americans actually understand what entry will mean for their future? And if they ever were to gain understanding, could the U.S. ever find the will? That's a problem right there, the will. It seems most of our leaders in Washington don't have any will or spine. They're all bought off by lobbyists and bought off by big corporate entities. Will they have the will or the way to extricate themselves from the NGFS? Or will the green financiers keep this country in their grip forever? As of now, we don't know the answers. All we know is that the struggle to maintain American sovereignty is now at a new flashpoint, and that flashpoint's the NGFS. Folks, I know this was a long-winded article. I know that some of it was a little dry. I tried to give you some laughs and make it entertaining here and there, but it was important. It's very important that you hear about this, all right? It's very important you see what's happening. The Great Reset's real. Of all the things that I don't cover and that I say might be conspiracy or this or that. The Great Reset, I don't call conspiracy. The Great Reset, the George Soros stuff, that is real. The World Economic Forum is inside the walls, passed inside the gates, and is now pillaging the land. All right. It's going to hurt for a couple years, but we have to do everything possible to pressure local legislatures to do the right thing. All right, folks, we have to peacefully push our agenda. We have to peacefully push back. It's the only way. All right. I appreciate you watching this episode. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, let me know. Send me an email, jameslane@americanreveille.com, or put it in the section below, the comment section. Do me a favor. All right. I'm on a little thing here that is probably going to replace YouTube. I really like it so far. It's called Odyssey, Odyssee. All right, folks. And you can find me there. Let's see. I am right here. The American Reveille. Boom. All right. You can find me at American_Reveille on Odyssey, Odyssee.com. We're still building it up. It only has 16 followers compared to the thousands I have in other places, but that's okay. Those other places might not exist very long with YouTube shadow banning me. So please find me on Odyssey, Odyssee. Find me there. I'll have it also in the description section below. Please follow me on Odyssey. It's very important. You can also find me on Rumble. All right, guys, rumble.com. All right. And I am right here. This is what my channel will look like. Boom. The American Reveille. That's another one. American_Reveille. Subscribe on Rumble. Please share this with everybody that you know. It's important we get the word out. It's important people know what we're doing. The American Reveille is going to become a national media sensation. We will become a network of many different talents, many different forms of entertainment, and it's only a matter of time, folks. Trust me. We do need your help. If there are people willing to do some work for us locally that are interested in making a difference, please email me directly at jameslane@americanreveille.com. jameslane@americanreveille.com. As you can see on the screen, that's REVEILLE.com. And if you would be so gracious, if you would like to give us a donation, if you would like to support our company and what we're doing, trying to push back and create the right narrative to push back against this socialist ideology, this Great Reset, this infectious poison that's been swinging the pendulum all the way to the far left. We are going to do everything we can through the medium of entertainment to pull it back to balance. So come here, AmericanReveille.com, go to the support us tab, hit support us, and you can donate Bitcoin, or you can support us right here by clicking this link and donating to us through PayPal. Any amount is welcomed. If you have it, we'll take it. We could use it. We are building up infrastructure. We're building street teams, brand ambassadors, all kinds of things. And to make the products for that takes money. And I'm pulling it out of pocket and doing the best I can to support it. So we do need your help. And if you can, we would graciously accept it. So thank you, Patriots. I appreciate you watching. I hope you have a great day, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.